Production support for In Focus is provided by Smithville, a locally owned business serving central and southern Indiana since 1922 with residential and business internet, voice, and security services. Smithville, local pride, global technology. Information at smithville.net. Hoosier Energy, providing electricity for central and southern Indiana electric cooperatives and their member customers. Information at hepn.com. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
By the year 2050, it's estimated that Americans aged 60 and older will total 112 million. In the early part of the 20th century, just 5 million people lived to that age. Census Department numbers show the elderly population could represent 1/5 of all Americans within 20 years. As the population ages, what are people doing to live longer lives and take care of themselves as they age? We'll discuss this and more as we put aging and wellness in focus. Thanks for joining us for this edition of In Focus. I'm Stan Jastrzebski. If you have questions for one of our studio experts during tonight's program, please email us at infocus@indiana.edu or call us at 1-800-987-9848. With the continued increase in the number of senior citizens, more and more caregivers are concerned with aging healthily. As WTIU's Shamika Neely reports, experts have a new saying which also serves as a warning of sorts. If you think old, you are old.
The latest statistics from the Administration on Aging states that elderly population are living longer. In 2009, persons over age 65 numbered more than 39 million. This represents 12.9% of the U.S. population. Some caregivers feel that it's more important to keep the minds and bodies active in order to continue to see a climb in the lifespan of the elderly.
As people come to Meadowood, wellness is something that they're looking for. People have been interested in what type of programming we have surrounding wellness, and I think that people have become more aware of being healthy in their later years, that prolongs their life and adds to their ability to stay active. We feature a balance class that is really important, and a lot of residents find that that's really helpful, and falls is a really dangerous aspect of aging for people, and so to work on one's balance is really good for preventing that.
Typically, I have exercise 3 times a week, which is really important to me, and balance class 2 times a week. So every day, some kind of physical, and I try to fit in because I need to some time in the Nautilus to work on upper back.
In 2010, nearly 53 million Americans will receive $703 billion in Social Security benefits. Retired workers will receive an average of $1,170 average monthly benefit per month. And Aloy says that this amount isn't going to increase next year, which may leave some senior citizens tightening purse strings.
Because of living longer, I think people are just thinking about retirement living in a different way, because they're looking at those assets and they're concerned about how they're going to make them last. And certainly, I know that this year or in the coming year there won't be a cost of living adjustment for Social Security.
According to the Administration on Aging, the 65 and older population lifespan has increased from almost 5 million in the 1900s to more than 45 million in 2000 and is projected to reach more than 92 million in 2013. Tonight, we focus on aspects of aging that more senior citizens are gravitating to, as well as the economic impact of living longer as we put aging and wellness in focus.
And joining me this evening is my co-host, Sarah Whitmire. Sarah, tell us who you'll be talking to in the WFIU studios tonight.
Good evening, Stan. Tonight I'll be speaking to Dr. Eric Plasker, and he's the author of The 100-Year Lifestyle, which has some interesting ideas about aging. So that coming up in just a bit.
Thanks, Sarah. And joining me tonight in the studio, our Area 10 Agency on Aging's Monroe and Owen County Executive Director, Carrie Conway, Brooke Aloy, Marketing Director at Meadowood Retirement Community, and Dr. Kosali Simon, a professor in Indiana University's School of Public and Environmental Affairs. Thanks to all three of you for being here. Carrie, we'll start with you. We'll move on down the line. I just want to address a basic question at the very beginning. I'd like your opinions on what the most pressing concerns are right now as we speak for seniors and indeed also for their caregivers.
There are many pressing concerns, but probably the one that first comes to mind is the fact that we have a system right now that, in terms of providing care for seniors in our community, that really is focused in the state of Indiana more on long-term care facilities than on home and community-based care. Indiana ranks 49th out of 50th states in terms of how we balance the money that we provide for care in nursing facilities as opposed to the money that we provide for care in communities. And also in terms of the number of people that we have in nursing facilities, long-term care facilities, and the number of people we have at home. And yet every survey of the elderly shows that actually they want to be at home. So probably our biggest challenge is going to be rebalancing that system and looking at how we can provide caregivers with the supports they need in order to provide care for seniors in their homes. It's more cost effective.
Brooke?
I think that from the retirement community perspective, Meadowood is a place where people would come to have an active retirement lifestyle, and with the economic downturn, I think the most pressing issue on their minds is making their retirement dollar last. And they've seen a decrease in their portfolio, and so they're most concerned about when they can move to experience a lot of the benefits that they get from living in community and having an opportunity to kind of experience that active retirement lifestyle. But the decision now is kind of, well, when will we do it as a result of that portfolio shift?
Dr. Simon?
I think from an economic and policy standpoint, big questions are going to be about how programs that we have existing that support elderly are going to be designed, and how they're going to react to these facts that we're seeing: increased longevity and the growth of the retiring baby boom generation, and how well we're going to be able to adapt to all these demographic changes.
Let's talk about that for a second. What does your research say about the need for some perhaps structural changes within the way the system serves an increasing elderly population? Do there need to be systematic structural changes in order to assure that people can, in fact, not just retire, but enjoy their longer lifespans in a way that is, sensible?
I think that aging implies lots of changes in an economic system, because you could think about there being things that could enhance economic productivity from increased longevity, but then there also could be aspects that impose higher costs on society. So one way that economic growth could increase as the population lives to a longer age is that their decisions change. If you think that you're going to live longer, you're going to act in ways that are different. So during the 20th century, the life expectancy has increased about 30 years. This means big changes in how people may approach investments they make in their own education. If you think you're going to be alive and working longer, you may invest more in your education. You may save more for years when you're going to be retired. On the other hand, this also means if retirement ages don't change with this demographic shift, that there'll be more years during which government programs like Medicare and Social Security are paying benefits out, and so there are going to be higher costs there. In the end, it sort of depends on how the balance is. How much do the changes in education and investment, work life extensions change to balance the cost sides? And I think those are big questions.
Brooke and Carrie, quickly from your perspectives, what do you think about the need, if any, for change in the way the system works at the moment?
Well, I think that we're sort of conditioned to think about aging in a deficit sense. I mean, when you think of aging, what comes to mind? It's sort of, this falling apart process. And the truth of the matter is, when retirement as a concept was invented, the average lifespan was about the retirement age. People might have lived 2 or 3 years past that. And we are obviously just within our lifetime, my lifetime anyway, not yours perhaps, we've lived to the point where, retirement, you've got another 20, 30 years. And what I have seen with this first wave of baby boomers starting to retire, this sort of silver tsunami that's rolling our way, is that they're not looking at retirement in the same way at all. They don't want to go off to that golf community in Arizona and sit in the sun all day long. They're looking at second careers, maybe in the nonprofit, something mission-oriented. They're looking at wanting to make a difference in the world, and they're looking at what's called an encore retirement, where they're not going to sit in the rocking chair. They're going to get up and do something. They're going to be productive. They're going to contribute.
Is that what you're seeing at Meadowood, Brooke? I mean, we saw some people exercising fairly actively in that video just a minute ago.
Right, without a doubt. People that come to Meadowood are interested in active retirement living. I think that's a tenet of our community that we really push when we're talking to people about making a move. They really want to be involved in the activities that we host both on our campus and around the community. A number of our residents volunteer. Carrie, through the Area 10 Agency on Aging, has a retired senior volunteer program, and I know that many people are part of that. The hospital has many of our residents as volunteers, so in that way, people are, as she describes, really looking for ways to be engaged and to keep themselves fit and active, as you can see in the video. But that's only one component. You know, there are other areas that that Carrie speaks about with regard to kind of reinvestigating career paths and things like that that are also a really important part of a healthy aging process.
All right, I want to get back to this in just a minute, but right now let's go over to Sarah with more. Sarah?
Thanks, Stan. I'm joined on the phone now by Dr. Eric Plasker. Dr. Plasker, welcome to In Focus.
My pleasure.
So we know people are living longer lives, but when I hear that, I can never help but ask myself, what about their quality of lives? Are people actually living longer, healthier lives?
Well, you know, that's a very interesting question and a very important point, because the answer is yes, they're living longer, and some are living with quality and some are not.
So much of aging is based on lifestyle choices and not genetics, but with us being more overworked, more overstressed, even more overweight, it almost seems like that doesn't actually work out. So how do you explain that?
Well, you know, it's interesting that you say that, because I think a lot of people do have that perception, but the reality of it is that I wonder what the actual longevity potential would be if we didn't live our lives that way. It's funny, I heard a great story about a woman who, I think it was 114 she lived to, and they said, you know, what's the secret to your incredible longevity? And she said, well, I stopped smoking at 91. Well, I wonder what her quality of life and longevity would have been like if she never smoked at all. And I wonder what the quality of life and longevity potential would be if people just lived good, healthy lifestyles that were conducive to not just healthy lives today, but would also at the same time be conducive to quality of life as people age.
Describe how people are approaching aging these days as compared to maybe how our grandparents or even our great-grandparents did.
Oh, I love that, because, you know, we've all heard the expression by now that 60 is the new 40 and 80 is the new 60 and 100 is the new 60. And I think there is a lot of truth to that. One of my favorite things when I researched the 100-year lifestyle was that people, today's group of 100-year-old people, which, by the way, is the world's fastest-growing segment of the population. 100-year-old people are by far the world's fastest-growing group. And what's interesting is that this group, none of them planned to get here. It's not like they had a grand strategic plan. In actuality, just the opposite is true. I think the only one that had a plan was Jack LaLanne, and his quality is amazing. Most people did not have a plan to get there. In fact, when they were born 100 years ago, their life expectancy, do you know what it was 100 years ago when they were born?
I have no idea.
It was 50.
Wow.
So this, yeah, that's a big wow. And so this is a generation of people that is literally outliving their life expectancy of what science said they were going to live. They're outliving their life expectancy by a staggering 5 decades. So we look at this generation, and for many of them who are suffering, we look at them as their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren and say, wow, you know, I don't know if I want to live that long because I don't want to be like that. But what we've learned from the 100-year lifestyle is that this group is not like that or suffering with their age. They're not like that because of their age. For many of them and most of them, they're like that because they were blindsided by their longevity. They had no clue they were going to live this long, so they didn't know how to take care of themselves to ensure an active, healthy quality of life for all of those years.
Thanks, Dr. Plasker. We'll have more with you later in the program. Back to you, Stan.
Thanks, Sarah. I want to ask a question that bases itself off of what Dr. Plasker just said, and we'll start with you, Dr. Simon, and come back this way. Do you think that people's attitudes are changing as one generation passes and the other takes its place as among the most elderly in the country in terms of what they expect from their care, what they expect from the twilight years of their lives?
I think definitely expectations change as you see the generation before you living a different kind of life, and you are also understanding that the longevity has increased, and so you are expecting to live these years longer. Retirement expectations change. What you're planning to do, second careers, as Carrie mentioned, change. So I think all these are changing with the times.
And Brooke, you were saying before the show that you had heard from someone who wanted to build a house at Meadowood because they had a view of what they wanted their retirement to be like, and they wanted to fulfill that.
Exactly. I've had contact with someone recently who wanted to build a home. They wanted to have, a gym in the home, and all of these certain specifications specific to what their goals were as a couple for aging, and they trended on the younger side, and I asked them what they wanted out of coming into a retirement community with regard to these goals, because they could certainly build this home in a subdivision around town. And he said that he was really interested in a campus community. He really wanted the support of the opportunity for a health center in the event that as aging did occur and his care needs change, that he had that on campus. And so in that way, people are thinking through all the steps of that process, I think.
Carrie, you were saying earlier that the numbers show that people want to stay home as long as possible. Has that changed at all as we get from, the greatest generation to the baby boomers to, some years from now, Gen X? Do you think that that's going to change at all?
I think that possibly will change. I think that what we're looking at right now, and it's, if you talk about the greatest generation, we're now moving to the largest generation. This is this group that is just now hitting their 60s. Back in the 60s, they changed the world, and now they're in their 60s and they're going to do it all over again. As we look at, we have a sort of a little demonstration senior center at the Area Agency on Aging out in Ellettsville called the Enright Center. And it's a fitness center. It's pretty much a bingo-free zone, and it is run by one director and 136 volunteers. Wow. And these volunteers basically have that thing programmed from 8 o'clock until 4:30 every single day. They know exactly what they want. It's all free. Anyone who's 50 years or older in Monroe or Owen County is welcome to come there. It's run totally by donations and pretty much totally by volunteers. They have built a community. They've built a community around the concept of retirement. That is what they have in common. They're all seniors, and they know exactly what they've increased connectivity to that community through bus routes, through ride sharing, through invitations. They teach people to connect to their grandchildren through Facebook, usually, at that center. I guess what I'm seeing as these baby boomers age, I'm seeing a very, very different look and much more active look to retirement.
It's interesting.
And it doesn't matter what income bracket they're in.
Well, that's interesting. You also mentioned things like ride sharing and volunteering and things that directly relate to cost of living and cost of what it is that you're doing. I want to ask you, and then go down the panel quickly, do we have the ability, and will we have the ability going forward, to retire based on the way the current money structures work with 401k plans, with the healthcare overhaul, which we can talk about a little bit more. But I mean, can we afford to live lives to 100 years old, as Dr. Plasker's talking about?
Well, it doesn't take a mathematical genius to figure out that the baby boomer generation is very different than the greatest generation. We don't have pensions. We don't have pensions. We have maybe a little bit of IRA or 401k money in general. We are going to be more dependent, much more dependent on Social Security, and we're going to be much more dependent on Medicare and Medicaid than the generation that went before us. There are an awful lot of really nice facilities available, retirement communities. They tend to be very expensive. The types of folks that we tend to work with at the Area 10 agency are more middle class and maybe even a little below that. And those are the folks that don't have the resources for a Meadowood. They really don't, and they never will. They're not going to call up a retirement community and say, I want to build a 3,500 square foot home, and it's going to be my retirement dream. And that's the vast majority of Americans. So in answer to your question, no. We have promised a level of commitment as a society that we cannot provide. These people and our communities really need to come to terms with this and come up with alternative ways of delivering service based on volunteerism and working together as a group and balance those needs in such a way that people have really their most basic needs met.
I want to get quick responses from the two of you in just a minute, but right now we need to run back over to Sarah, who's still on the line with Dr. Plasker. Sarah?
Thanks, Stan. Now, Dr. Plasker, I want to ask you about the societal implications of people living longer. What does it mean for society as a whole if people are living to 100 years plus?
I love the question also because it really speaks to what has become a purpose of mine as to get this message out and how important it is to get the message out. I mean, let's face it, our society was not designed for a 100-year lifespan. We were designed to live to age 59, and then it was expanded to 62, and I'm talking about health care and financial implications and social implications and all of those things and all of the ways that our society structure was established for a 60-year lifespan. And so then when people started living longer, they raised it to 62, and then they raised it to 65, and now you get additional incentives if you don't retire till 67 and 72. And see, the problem is that the system needs a complete and total reinvention because we keep expanding it by 2 years at a time and 3 years at a time when we just saw that this current generation has literally outlived their life expectancy by 5 decades. We know that the motto or the paradigm of this 60-year lifespan generation, their philosophy when it came to health care was, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And they defined broke, many of them, as serious life-threatening diseases or severe excruciating pain. And the problem is that that's very expensive, and when the breakdowns happen, they alter the quality of your life forever, and they take away from your quality of life forever. When the reality of it is that we need to reinvent that paradigm and redefine broke, whereas being out of balance in your life is broke, not waiting for diseases, not waiting for sicknesses, and reorganizing our thinking around longevity. So from a healthcare standpoint, our healthcare system was actually never, it was sold as healthcare, but in my opinion, it's not really a healthcare system. It's a crisis care system.
Is there any way we can look into the future and see if perhaps we're one of these people who may live to 100?
We actually have a formula that we do. It's called the Empire, and it stands for, it's M-PYR, which stands for minimum potential years remaining. And what you do is you think about the oldest grandparent in your family that's ever lived. So let's do this for you, Sarah. So how old is the oldest grandparent in your family that ever lived?
I have a grandmother who's 88, but she's still living.
Okay, so 88 and counting. Okay, and your current age is?
29.
29. Okay, so that means if you take 88 minus 29, that's your empire. So 88 minus 29 comes out to be 59. So your minimum potential years remaining that we know of, based on your own family history, is another 59 more years minimum because Grandma's still going.
Unfortunately, we're out of time, so thank you so much, Dr. Plasker.
My pleasure, Sarah. Take care.
Back to you, Stan.
Thanks, Sarah. Real quick, Brooke and Dr. Simon, I wanted to get quick responses from each of you on whether we can afford to live the lives it now seems biologically we are about to live. Brooke, we'll go to you first.
Well, I think that there's a little bit of a creativity in that. For example, we have some people who have considered moving in together that are siblings, or ways to sort of share some of the costs of what it might be to move into, for example, Meadowood, where they have an extra large apartment, but because they're living together, the cost can be split. So things like that may be coming down the way that we might see more of in an effort to make that money last.
So I think it's going to be very challenging. I want to bring this conversation around to health care, where I know we're going. So we have to think about what it is that's leading to longevity increases in the first place, and think of the fact that people are dying less so of cancers and heart diseases, and because they're not dying at those ages of those illnesses, they're going to die of something later on, and that the longer individuals are alive, the more health care will be consumed. Now, people are living healthier lives, but we're living in times when the ability of the healthcare system to do things for us is also increasing, but increasing at a cost. So this is all going to impose a lot of challenges on how the system is going to respond.
Obviously, in the last year, we've talked a lot about overhauling the healthcare system in this country, and there are a lot of those provisions that lead directly to care for the elderly. What is your feeling, and then I want to get Brooke and Carrie's feelings as well. What do you think about the healthcare overhaul bill as it respects being able to treat people longer, being able to make them lead longer lives, and being able to lead happy lives as long as they are alive?
It depends on what part of healthcare reform this is going to relate to, but I think the most relevant parts are about the funding mechanisms for long-term care that's in the healthcare reform bill, and I think we'll be talking more about that. But thinking about how can the system become more flexible to allow for different types of long-term care, and making insurance systems more easily available for planning those kinds of care, I think are really important parts.
Brooke and then Carrie real quick.
For example, the CLASS Act will provide potentially what may serve as long-term care insurance for people who may need to go into nursing care and formerly would not have been able to afford that, and so it may supplement what they were formerly able to pay privately so that they can afford that at a more reasonable level. Or they may be looking at the expansion of home care services so that people can remain in the home longer, and through increased funding for that, have it paid for by governmental programs.
And I would agree with that. I think probably the most, the Affordable Care Act, probably the most important provision for seniors is the fact that you are looking at supplementing systems of home-based and community-based care. And those are the systems that deliver care most cost-effectively. And to build capacity within those systems is going to be critical to this large group of seniors that's headed our way.
Well, my thanks to all of you. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. This is one of those topics we could have gone on for a long time, but thanks for helping to encapsulate it the way you did.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of you listening and watching, and thanks to my co-host, Sarah Whitmire, for your help this evening. Sarah, thanks.
Thanks, Dan.
And please do join us for our next In Focus. You can also post your questions or your comments at infocus@indiana.edu. You can see portions of this show by going to our website, which is indianapublicmedia.org/infocus. And we hope to see you in 2011, Season 3 of In Focus. For right now, have a good night and happy holidays from all of us here at WTIU.
Production support for In Focus is provided by Smithville, a locally owned business serving central and southern Indiana since 1922 with residential and business internet, voice, and security services. Smithville, local pride, global technology. Information at smithville.net. Hoosier Energy, providing electricity for central and southern Indiana electric cooperatives and their member customers. Information at hepn.com. And by viewers like you. Thank you.